like this is the time, this is the era.
Yep. Very cool.
All right. Do you want me to start letting everyone in?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. All right, here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're just gonna wait a few more minutes to let people continue to sign on. My name is Romy. I'm with Scrum Training Institute. This is our speaker, Natalie. Today we're gonna be discussing, so you want to work in Agile or Scrum. Let's just give a few more minutes for people to continue to log on, and then I'm gonna go over 2 slides, some house rules, and just an overview, and then Natalie's gonna take over. Okay. Alrighty. Okay. Natalie, if you wanna pull the slides up.
Okay, can you guys not see? I am sharing.
Yeah, I mean the next 2 slides.
Gotcha.
Okay, so just to go over some housekeeping rules, we ask that everyone keeps their audio on mute for the entire duration of the presentation. If you have any questions or comments during the presentation, please use the chat feature. We're gonna have time at the end for discussion. And just so everyone is informed, this is being recorded and you will be receiving a copy via email sometime later this week. Okay. All right, Natalie, if you want to go ahead and take it over.
Cool. Sounds good. Okay. Well, welcome everyone. As Romy mentioned, you are here for the So You Want to Work in Agile or Scrum webinar. And hopefully, you know, all of you will find at least 1 or 2 awesome nuggets to take away from this presentation. With putting together a presentation about career changing or job searching, it's difficult to hit everybody's needs, right? Everybody is in different places in their career or their job search. So, you know, hopefully, like I said, some of this may be what I would refer to as common sense, or things that you're, I'm sure, already employing in your own professional and career job searches. But maybe you'll find some new nuggets here, and to really begin to kind of put, you know, wrap your head around some of the things that maybe could help you with that process. If you're new to the process and haven't done it in a number of years, because I know a number of folks are in that situation as well. And one thing that I will say before I go over the agenda here is that that the process changes so rapidly. Obviously, what people are going through now with career changing or job searching during the pandemic period is obviously vastly different than job searching prior to, and probably will change as, you know, we move forward into some of our new environment here. So I'm trying to kind of straddle that and pull in examples from pre, during, and post pandemic to kind of help along the way to pull in different strategies that you can use, you know, whatever stage we're in during these interesting times. So the agenda should be on your screen here. And my first part of the presentation is something that I like to call getting to know Ken. Ken is your knowledge, experience, and network. And it's kind of a fun way to remember those 3 critical components with career changing or job searching, especially if you're targeting a specific industry or job type or something like that. So I'm going to talk through what each of those pieces entails as it relates to Agile and Scrum. But a lot of what you'll take away, and this is really throughout the entire presentation, you'll be able to apply to any job search or career change. So kind of keep that in mind. And then we'll talk a little bit about targeting companies and positions, again, drilling down a little bit more specifically into Agile and Scrum, and then preparing for an interview, which is never a fun experience. Although some people feel like it's fun. I don't know. It's always kind of a very stressful experience. But there's some ways that you can make it a less stressful experience, and we'll talk about that. Throughout the presentation, I'm going to be referring to a lot of different tools and resources. Please know that two things: you'll receive a recording of this presentation. And secondly, when I talk about links, tools, and resources, I'm going to be sending you a document with the recording that lists all of those links and resources. So you don't have to panic and try to write down all of these tools and resources. I am going to send you a follow-up with that specific information. One other thing that I want to mention is that while I am going to talk about these items sequentially, it's important to realize that obviously when you're employing or utilizing these strategies, you're not going to necessarily work through these sequentially. Many of these steps are going to overlap through your journey, whether it's career changing or just job searching in general. Okay. All right. So the first section, as I mentioned, is about getting to know Ken. And the first letter in Ken is K, for knowledge. So the first thing that you want to remember when you are choosing whether you're career changing or looking to move into a different area within your same industry even, you really want to be sure that it's something you like to do. So you want to do your research and build your knowledge about roles and positions within Scrum and Agile. And that's a really important first step. So knowledge is kind of broken out into two parts. The first part is building your knowledge around the roles and positions within Agile and Scrum, really understanding what those positions entail. And then the second part of knowledge is just building your overall knowledge through education, certifications, training, things like that. So we'll talk about them in two pieces. So the first part of knowledge is to really understand, again, where do you find positions in Agile and Scrum? And, what are some of the typical positions that you might find, and are they the right fit for you? For the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to be using the Scrum Master position as an example, okay? However, keep in mind, almost everything I talk about, you can apply to Agile Coach, Product Owner, different positions within Agile and Scrum. But to keep it kind of simple, I'm going to utilize Scrum Master as kind of my primary example when I talk through each of these. So when I talk about doing your research, one thing I want you to realize is that, and if you don't already know it, is obviously, especially when we talk about Scrum Masters or Product Owners, they're most prevalent in tech and software industries. That is definitely true. And that's not surprising. However, you want to keep an open mind when you're job searching and looking to change careers, especially if you're seeking a position as a Scrum Master. So while the evolution of a position like a Scrum Master has taken place primarily in tech industries, it's not the only industry in which Scrum can thrive, and Agile. More and more industries are adopting Agile principles, which means that Scrum is becoming more prevalent, and Scrum Masters or Agile coaches are becoming more prevalent in other industries as well. So oftentimes I hear those that are job searching or looking for a position as a Scrum Master, well, I don't have coding experience, or I don't have engineering or database experience. How can I possibly become a Scrum Master? Well, you know, there's a lot of skills that go into being a Scrum Master that are outside of the tech space. That being said, having a tech background is of course useful in basically speaking the Scrum Master position or what it takes from a technical perspective. So having that experience is certainly helpful, but it's not 100% required. When you are looking into Scrum and Agile positions, especially a Scrum Master position, you really need to research what skills are part of becoming a Scrum Master. A Scrum Master does not equal a project manager. So a lot of times, again, I'll hear project managers say, oh, well, I just want to move into a Scrum Master role. You know, I've been a project manager for 10 years. I want to move into a Scrum Master role. Again, some of the skills are very transferable. Some are not. Scrum Master does not equal a project manager. So, you know, you're going to utilize a very different skill set as a Scrum Master. Certainly, organization and communication skills are going to be important. But remember, a Scrum Master, if you're at all familiar with Scrum and Agile, Scrum Master does not manage or assign tasks. They're not the boss. So that's something to keep in mind, again, as you're doing your research and understanding more about roles within Scrum and Agile. Moving on to the next point, Scrum Masters are more like coaches. They are coaches. So when I mentioned that it requires a different skill set, this is kind of what I'm talking about. So Scrum Masters are not managers. They coach, they facilitate, they support, they motivate, and they remove obstacles to make sure that teams are following Scrum processes. So employers are looking for concrete, relevant examples of you using coaching or facilitation skills. So as you're thinking about your own skills, ask yourself, have I coached before? Doesn't have to be in Agile or Scrum. Have you coached? There could be a lot of different arenas where you may have coached. Literally, if you've coached a sports team, that is coaching. You can draw from that experience. So think about other areas of your life where maybe you've put those skills into play. Again, this part of building your knowledge is all about doing the research. You want to not only learn more about the position itself, but whether it's a good fit for you. There are some tools out there to help you kind of gauge what positions or jobs or industries are good fits for your skills and interests. The ONET Interest Profiler is one example, and I am going to send you the link to the ONET Interest Profiler. It's free. You can do it online or you can do it via paper pencil, but the online version is super easy and gives you some really good results quickly to kind of help you discern where your skills and interests lie if you're kind of just moving into your career changing arena. Okay, so the next part of knowledge is now, you know, you kind of know more about Scrum and Agile, you know about the positions, you know about the roles. Now you have to look at building your knowledge as it relates to your skills. And I'm going to talk about 3 ways for you to do this. There are a lot of different ways that you can enhance your skills, but chances are they're going to fall into one of these categories. So I'm going to talk about utilizing internal professional development to build your skill set. I'm going to talk about utilizing organizational opportunities like conferences and meetups to enhance your skills. And I'll talk about courses and certifications and things that are available out there as well. So internal professional development. If you are currently working, check with your internal training and development department to see what courses are offered that may enhance your skills. Again, even if you work in an organization that does not utilize or is not working in Agile or Scrum. Maybe they have internal training classes on coaching, communication, conflict resolution, teamwork, things like that, that again are skill sets that will help you, you know, begin to build your skills around Agile and Scrum. And anytime you have the opportunity to engage in internal professional development, that of course shows your managers and those that you're interacting with in your own company that, you know, you're showing initiative to take these courses that are going to help you build a stronger relationship with your current employer. And I'm going to talk about some ways that you can even build in opportunities to work with your current employer to almost tailor a job or a description of a job that may allow you to utilize Agile and Scrum values and principles in your current job situation. Okay, so that's one thing. You don't want to forget about where it is that you work now if you're currently working. Because oftentimes you can engage in professional development that can help you build those skills outside of your current job role. Conferences and meetups. Now again, pre-COVID, there were plenty of opportunities to take advantage of meetups and conferences on an in-person basis. Now, during COVID, a lot of those organizations have or are beginning to move into a virtual format, which actually provides a lot of advantages because now there are opportunities to take advantage of these different venues or opportunities from a remote perspective. So whereas before you might take advantage of conferences and meetups just in your local area, you can now take advantage of meetups and conferences from around the country and potentially around the world. A lot of these are actually low cost or free. Meetups generally are free and can go anywhere from online networking to actually signing up to take workshops online as well through the meetup format. So don't discount utilizing those vehicles to build your knowledge and your skills. A lot of times Scrum and Agile experts will provide these workshops that you can attend for little or no cost. Scrum Alliance is another resource that is definitely good to kind of keep up with, to find national and regional events that relate to Scrum and Agile. Your local meetup pages offer things like Lean Coffee for Agile and Scrum. Again, depending where you're located, and I noticed from the signups, we had people from all over the world that signed up for this webinar. So depending on where you're located, you might be having in-person meetups again. I know I'm in Central Florida and we're not. We have, well, there might be some that are going on, but for the most part, a lot of that is still virtual. So it really is going to depend on where you're located. However, a lot that are taking place in a virtual setting could potentially be more convenient. And like I mentioned, can open up a lot more opportunities. For instance, there is a tool, a collaboration tool out there called Miro. And I'm going to send you some information on this as well. But they actually are participating in an online virtual collaboration conference taking place in October. And it's a national conference that is providing breakouts for different classes to build knowledge about collaboration, Agile, Scrum, different strategies and techniques for working in a virtual environment, things like that. And this virtual conference is free, which I thought was so cool. And I signed up for it immediately because it's one of those conferences where likely if it was taking place in person, would probably be $500–600 to attend the conference. So the fact that it's virtual is allowing it to be offered to people at no cost, which is great. And I'll send you the link to that as well with the resources that I'm going to be sending you. All right, and then third, another way to enhance your skills and build your knowledge around Agile and Scrum is to complete a certification course. If you've not done that, or if you're looking to do that, again, using Scrum Master as an example, Scrum Master certification courses are generally pretty short. They're usually 2-day workshops that prepare you to take the Scrum Master certification exam. And then once you pass the exam, you earn your Scrum Master certification that's valid for 2 years. So a certification can be a useful tool to what I call add to your toolkit, right? You know, before you enroll, I recommend that if you are working, check with your employer to see if they may cover a portion or all of the cost for you to take a certification course. Because a lot of companies are now working virtually, a lot of the certification courses are offered virtually as well, which actually may be resulting in sometimes a lower rate or a lower amount to invest in taking that course. So again, there's just more opportunity out there available. And of course, Scrum Training Institute does offer certification courses if you're at all interested. And a lot of companies in training companies and software and tool companies are again offering a lot of free training, which is awesome. There's tools out there that like Miro and Trello, which is kind of a Kanban board tool that offer free versions of their software to sign up for and to try and to learn more about. This is another area where you can build your knowledge. Build your knowledge around tools that are out there that help organizations function remotely and collaborate online. Those are all areas that if you have a leg up in that area and can build your skills around that, that again gives you another skill to add to your toolkit. And again, to put a positive spin on the pandemic, a lot of these companies are offering free webinars, videos, and training opportunities to help you learn their tools. So definitely, I encourage you to take advantage of building your knowledge. I was sharing with Romy earlier when we were waiting to come online that I read a posting on social media about the fact that COVID has provided this environment where if you hadn't learned something new or picked up a new skill or hobby during this pandemic, then you really don't want to, because there are so many opportunities to take advantage of free education out there in a lot of areas, whether it's hobbies or professional skills. So definitely take advantage of that. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the E in Ken. And this is about building your experience. So we talked a little bit about building your knowledge. Now we want to move into building your experience. If you're a career changer or if you're looking for a new role within a tech or software industry, it can be difficult, right? It can be difficult to find a job when you have no experience. It's that same old job search cycle, right? How can I get experience if I have no experience? It can be difficult. Getting the education and certification part, sometimes that's easy. Now comes the hard part. How do you get the experience? Here's where, in a lot of cases, especially if you're looking to break into a technical field or a industry that utilizes Scrum or Agile, you have to dig deep and come out of your comfort zone. It really means a lot of times you have to get uncomfortable. Persistence, patience, those are all keys to finding a job with little or no experience. So what are some ways that you can build your experience? I'm going to outline 3 ways, and I'll talk a little bit about utilizing internal professional opportunities within an organization that you might already be working in, external professional opportunities, and what I call non-traditional opportunities. So when we talk about internal professional opportunities, these are looking for opportunities within the organization that you're currently working. If you're looking specifically for a Scrum Master position, again, I mentioned skills centered around coaching and team building, communication, things like that. Look for opportunities. Are there dysfunctional or toxic teams in your organization? Chances are good that that answer is yes, right? Use the knowledge and education that you've gained and put together a proposal indicating that you want to implement Scrum or some of the Scrum techniques centered around team dynamics to improve a team or your team, maybe. If your organization already uses Scrum, ask for an opportunity to shadow a current Scrum Master or a product owner. In these situations, a lot of times you do need to go above and beyond your regular job duties on your own time, but ultimately it's going to be worth the investment if that's really the area that you want to move into and that you want to actually gain some valid experience. So all of those types of things that you can do internally in your own organization help to build your experience that allow you to speak legitimately about situations and examples when it comes time to interview and apply for jobs. External professional opportunities. So if you're not currently working, there's a lot of things that you can do to still work on building your experience. You may want to consider volunteering or even interning. And honestly, if you've been in the job market or in a career for even decades, don't be afraid to put yourself out there as a volunteer or an intern. Especially now, believe it or not, there are so many opportunities for volunteering, especially with nonprofits. Nonprofits and education institutions are always looking for volunteers, but now a lot of them are strapped very thin. They've had to furlough a lot of their workers, and they're looking for help. And a lot of the help they're looking for are helping them with completing projects. I don't know how many of you have heard of an organization called volunteermatch.org. It's a phenomenal organization that matches people up with volunteer opportunities. It's a website where you can fill out an interest form, list your skills, and then based on your education, your experience, and your interests, they'll match you up with volunteer opportunities and organizations that you can help. They have a whole additional separate set of opportunities that are now available remotely due to COVID. So again, it kind of opens you up to not only opportunities in your local area, but opportunities across the country and around the world. I want to tell you a little bit about my experience with this. I did some career coaching in my last position when I worked for a school district in my area here in Central Florida. And through doing career coaching with adults, I learned about volunteermatch.org. And I thought, wow, in order for me to intelligently talk about this, I should go ahead and sign up and use it. And I did. And during one summer a couple years ago, I, of course, being in education, I had the summer off and I thought, well, what better time to volunteer? And I signed up for a virtual coaching opportunity with an organization in East LA called SCS Noonan organization. And they work a lot with underprivileged minority students, high school students, and college students out in the LA area. And they needed career and college coaches to work virtually with these students. it was an amazing experience. And I already had some coaching experience, but I learned so much from this volunteer opportunity. They put me through an entire training program that was entirely free. So I got to take advantage of their training resources to learn, and then obviously got to give back to them by giving hours in a virtual setting to work with students who needed help with college applications, resumes for jobs, finding internships, all types of things that that these students needed help with. And it was an amazing experience. I was then able to leverage that volunteer opportunity into a freelancing opportunity with another STEM nonprofit, which then became a paid position. So so that was just my own personal example with how I was able to not only learn a ton, give back, but then also utilize the networking that I gained from that to gain a position in a freelance consulting role. So volunteermatch.org, again, one of those awesome resources that I'm going to send to you after the webinar. I want to talk a little bit about non-traditional opportunities now. So when I talked about Scrum Master, I talked about that as utilizing a lot of coaching skill sets within that role. So again, do you have experience coaching? These are more non-traditional opportunities that you can draw from your experiences. So these are areas that you may already have done in your past where you can draw from actual experience to talk about how you would potentially leverage that in a work environment or a team environment. Another great way to gain experience centered around some of the skills required for a Scrum Master would be to become a mentor. If you've never done this, it's a great opportunity to again, build your skills around coaching and mentoring and facilitating. And it's a great way to, again, build your network. You can also seek to be mentored. That is another way to obviously show that you understand the importance of mentoring and that also you are open and willing to accept feedback from a mentor, which are all traits and values that are important in Scrum and Agile as well. So some ways that you can do that. Obviously, LinkedIn is a great format to seek out mentors or to connect with members in your network who might need mentoring or that you could mentor. Another resource that I'm going to send to you for information is a organization called Micro Mentor, and it's a nonprofit that is part of the Mercy Corps, and it's a worldwide organization. And Micro Mentor is considered really the world's largest community of entrepreneurs and volunteer business mentors. So you may say, oh, but I'm not an entrepreneur. I don't know how to mentor somebody around entrepreneurship. They need mentors for everything as it relates to business. It could be marketing, it could be tech. You may find an opportunity to mentor a small business owner who's trying to set up a software program to handle sales leads. Any number of different opportunities to help and to mentor small business owners and entrepreneurs from around the world. And it's a really cool organization. And that's another area where, again, you're volunteering your time, but you're gaining such valuable skills and you're giving back as well, which is very, very important. So those are some examples of ways that you can build your experience outside of actually having a Scrum Master or Agile Coach position. I wanted to just show you a couple examples. These volunteer examples, I literally found these within like 5 minutes of searching on volunteermatch.org. And these are just, again, very basic volunteer examples, but I just pulled the tech and computer category and found a volunteer to support seniors as a digital coach. And that's with an organization called the Community Tech Network. A virtual tech mentor with the San Jose Public Library. And an organization called School Group is looking for a JIRA administrator. So for those of you that know JIRA, which is a a very common Agile and Scrum tool, this organization is looking for a JIRA administrator. Now, again, that probably is a pretty extensive role, and but hey, it's a volunteer role. I'm sure if you have 5 hours a week to give, they'll take 5 hours from you. It's that kind of thing. So these were some real quick examples that I found just doing a very quick search. And these were under the virtual category as well. Okay, so I'm on N now in my CAN acronym, and this is about building your network. So building your network, again, is not one of those areas that we, in some cases, enjoy. But it's so critically important, and it's vital to your career growth. So I'm going to talk about in-person, virtual, and then just some best practices around networking. Again, a lot of this, if you've been, in the work world for a while, you know about these, but it helps to be reminded about some of these techniques and ways that you can build your network. So we talk about in-person networking. And again, just to reiterate, networking is so important at every stage of your career. It's one of those things that you never stop networking. So continuing to participate in conferences or networking events related to Agile and Scrum is such a great way to make connections with industry professionals. This is a repeat of what I talked about earlier, but Scrum Alliance and Meetup are good starting points to locate Agile and Scrum and what we call lean coffee gatherings that are available near you. Again, not a lot of these are happening in person now. However, many of them have converted to an online virtual format, which takes on kind of a whole new meaning or different way of networking. Which brings us to the second item here, which is virtual networking. So I really believe, like it or not, virtual networking is probably here to stay. There are lots of ways that you can virtually network. If you want to do it in a live format, definitely look for those meetup opportunities or conferences or webinars where you can interact and engage online and with others. In addition, you want to really join in on conversations virtually as well. Join relevant groups on Facebook and LinkedIn related to Agile and Scrum. Make sure that you're commenting and sharing and posting. Don't just troll. You want to really be engaging in the process and sharing information and giving back. You can also ask for informational interviews being done in a virtual format. One of the nice things about the new work from home environment is that you might find that people are more open to doing informational interviews. Before, if somebody had to drive and meet you at a coffee shop, they might be less likely to make that commitment. But now, if all that it means is logging onto Zoom and spending 15 minutes with you, they might be more likely to take the time to do that. So definitely offer that. If you want to learn more about a Scrum Master position and you don't have a Scrum Master to shadow, reach out to a Scrum Master and ask for an informational interview and do it via Zoom. And that's a great way to kind of, again, show that initiative and build your knowledge and build your network, obviously. Okay. So when we talk about best practices, with networking, sometimes it can be a very uncomfortable situation. The one best practice that I want to reiterate, and we won't spend a lot of time on it, but I truly believe that with networking, you really have to do a lot of listening and approach it with a give attitude rather than a get attitude. And that's where, rather than just coming out and asking someone to help you, um, you know, ultimately you really may want their help, but you want to really find out, okay, what's in it for them as well, and what can you provide and what can you give? Um, and the idea really overall is just connecting with people on a human level. And I wish I had an exact formula to do that from a networking perspective. It is difficult and takes practice. Um, if you're reaching out through email, reach out in a way that again shows that that this isn't just the first time that you're reaching out to them in the past 5 years when all of a sudden you need help. So stick within your network that you regularly keep in touch with first if you're going to reach out to them. If you've got certain skills or things that you can offer them, again, offer just to get together via Zoom and talk about, hey, what are some ways we can partner to offer, things for each other? Those are some ways to really build your network as well. And just some best practices that center around that. Okay, so I feel like I'm kind of definitely moving quickly here, but I want to leave some time for us to have questions at the end. So I want to talk a little bit about targeting companies and positions. When you're seeking a position in Agile and Scrum, again, just getting back to that research part of it, you want to be sure that you're targeting organizations that have a positive culture and a pattern of growth. Easier said than done, right? You really are not always sure which companies fall into those categories. So you really need to do a little bit of legwork. Again, researching companies on social media. Set up Google alerts. When I discovered Google alerts, I thought, oh my gosh, what a cool thing. And I kind of, I consider myself relatively tech savvy, but Google alerts are really cool. You can set up a Google alert that really just will ping you as often as you want, every day, every week, on a particular company when they show up in the news. Set up an alert related to Agile and Scrum, and just kind of follow that. And then, of course, if you're interested in a particular company or organization, follow them on social media, and not just follow them on Facebook. Follow them on all the channels so that you're getting, all different viewpoints on things that they're doing or interactions they're having with their customers and with their employees. Reach out to key contacts. LinkedIn is a great way to do this. And reaching out to key contacts within an organization can really help you target your job search as well. And this is one thing I want to mention as well. When you're beginning this process of really focusing in and targeting different companies and positions, it is so important that you track it. There are tons of different tools out there that are available for you to track. And again, I'm going to send you these when I send you your resources. But things like Evernote, Notion, Trello, those are all really good tools for you to use to track companies that you are either following or that you've applied for positions at, or where you've reached out to individuals at that company. And keeping all of that organized is so critical. And again, utilize your Scrum knowledge and your Agile knowledge to track. Just to show you an example, This is an old Trello board that I created, and this is a couple years old, so it's not entirely relevant now, but it gives you an idea. I utilized Trello when I was looking for some positions within tech, and I just set it up, with different like like a whiteboard, like a Kanban board, and I set it up based on companies and positions I had applied to, who I needed to follow up with, who I had interviews scheduled with, who I had contacted, and then within those different items, I actually categorize them. You see a lot of color coding and things that are layered in there. So within there, like for instance, this was one position with an organization that I had applied to. It was for an ed tech curriculum developer and coach for an organization called Coach of the Future. And I set it up with color coding. Was it a full-time position? What categories did it fall in? Was it IT? Was it coaching? Was it training? I also, you could put attachments in there. So I actually saved off the application questions that I had to fill out. Because how frustrating is that when you have to fill out application after application after application with all the same questions, and you are almost recreating the wheel? Well, if you save a text file of some common application questions and answers, you can go right to that text file and pull those answers into another application. So those are just some things that you can utilize, Trello or Evernote or Notion or one of those tools to do that. And again, I'm going to send you links to those tools so that you have, and there's by no means are those the only tools out there. It's just a starting point for you. Okay. So with the last few minutes here, I'm going to talk about preparing for an interview. And there's a lot to talk about with this, but a lot of it we've already discussed. So I'll be able to kind of run through this pretty quick. I kind of broke this out into talking about before the interview, during the interview, and after the interview. And again, we're talking specifically as it relates to Agile and Scrum, and actually some of the examples I have are related specifically to a Scrum Master position. But again, much of this you can utilize in other positions as well. So we've talked about a lot of this already, right? Researching the company. Hopefully you've done that before you even apply. If you haven't, you definitely want to do it before you go to the interview. It's so critical that you learn not only basic information about the company and their mission and their products, but you can learn a lot just by looking at their social media and looking at their website. Is their website accurate? Is it well written? Does it have grammatically correct information? Those are all going to be things that, can raise red flags for you as you're preparing for your interview. Then you want to take your research a bit further. You want to try to find out how they're currently implementing Agile and Scrum, if you're able to find that information. Conduct your research, again, through social media, press releases, LinkedIn. All of those are ways that you can do that. Look at company reviews on Glassdoor, on Indeed. Don't rely on company reviews, however. Look for patterns, but don't rely on company interview or reviews alone. And always be cautious with reading reviews as well. You want to be definitely doing your due diligence with looking at all sides of the situation. And then finally, when you're researching, know your audience and the format of the interview. Obviously, we'll talk more about this, but is it a phone interview? Is it a video conference? Is it one person? Is it a panel? Knowing all that allows you to obviously research that process. If you know the names of the people, look them up on LinkedIn. Start to get a feel for who they are, what their positions are. You can then sense what kind of questions they may ask you as a result. You really want to understand the job description. One of the things, it's not just one thing to read the job description, but you need to understand the job description. A lot of times with technical job descriptions, there's often conflicting information. There's potentially jargon or a laundry list of boilerplate requirements that may have nothing to do with the job. You want to be able to decipher that from the job description. In addition, a poorly written job description can be a red flag. If the job description was written by somebody who knows nothing about the job itself, that can be an issue. So you want to do your homework with that. Plus, when you look at the job description, a lot of times you can begin to decipher the types of questions that they may ask you in the interview as well. You know, you want to look for job descriptions like supporting and coaching the team on Scrum practices, guiding and empowering the team, versus things that are more of a project management type description, which are things like tracking project tasks or managing the development team. Those are, you know, potential red flags that they're really might be looking more for a project manager and not necessarily a Scrum Master. You, of course, want to develop relevant questions to ask during the interview. That goes without saying. And again, remember, you're vetting the employer in addition to the employer vetting you. You want to outline your projects and accomplishments ahead of time. All of that is important. You can utilize tools that we talked about, Trello, Evernote, to kind of outline those projects and accomplishments. And then you have them to rehearse, because you do need to rehearse. And you want to rehearse multiple times before your interview, especially if you're going to be utilizing a telephone or video interview. Nowadays, there really are probably not many in-person interviews going on. So you want to practice with whatever tool they're going to be using. If it's Zoom, practice with Zoom. If it's Skype, practice with Skype. You need to be able to feel comfortable with the technology before the interview. Okay, so during the interview, I'm not honestly going to talk too much about this, because if you've done your preparation, all the items we just talked about, this is honestly going to be the easiest part. If your interview is by video, as I mentioned earlier, you want to be sure you're comfortable with the technology. So something with the video technology, you want to make sure that you're at eye level with the camera. And that you're not looking down and that you're not looking up. So practice that. You want to be sure you're in a quiet environment with hopefully a relatively neutral background, in a way that you're not going to have anything happening that's going to distract you or the interviewer during the interview. One thing I want to caution is to be careful with phone and video delays, especially if it's you know, a situation where you're interviewing across the country or around the world. There will be delays, and a lot of times it's even worse with phone. And by delays, you know, you're not going to necessarily know, but you need to be prepared for it and be careful to speak not too fast, that you're going to talk over somebody, because that's the most common thing that can happen with those delays. And it can get to be very awkward, frustrating, and can knock you off your game. So being aware that it may happen is part of it. But then again, rehearsing with someone live is going to help you with that as well. You want to always be sure that you're using your Scrum and Agile terminology when you're answering questions, you know, and speaking in a way that you're discussing examples in your current or past roles, very specifically to Scrum and Agile processes. Again, even if you don't have an experience that's from a work environment, if you have an experience from a volunteer opportunity, formulate it and explain it in a way that utilizes the terminology and the processes that shows the interviewer that you're familiar with Scrum and Agile. Be ready to ask those questions. Things like, what does success look like for the position that you're interviewing for? That's a great question to ask the interviewer. Or ask the interviewer, how would you describe your team culture? Those are great questions as well. And again, have to do with not only, them understanding that you're familiar with how a team environment works, but you're also vetting them. You want to hear their answers and you want to listen to their answers. Okay. So finally, to wrap up here, after the interview, absolutely 100% of the time you want to follow up. Try to personalize and connect on a human level, however. Don't just send a form letter email to 3 people that you interviewed with and they all get the same email. Don't do that. They talk to each other. They're going to know. Sure, it's an attempt at follow-up, but it's not really a great attempt. So that requires you to listen during the interview and take away things that they've said to you. Try to personalize it, try to connect with them on a personal level when you do your follow-up. And really, maybe we do this in reverse because you want to do your own retrospective, to use a Scrum and Agile term. You want to reflect on the interview as quickly as possible after the interview, so that you can basically document for yourself what went well, what would you change, and how are you going to change it if it's something that you need to do differently. And if you do that retrospective using the same template over and over, you're going to then have that to refer back to after each interview and be able to improve on things that maybe you need to improve on, but also to be sure that you carry through things that worked well, that you felt worked well and flowed well. And it may help you pull out details to help you with your follow-up. Okay, so again, this is utilizing some of the tools and principles of Agile and Scrum themselves and employing those into your job search and your process overall, which is important. Okay, so we've got about 5 minutes, and I'm sorry we don't have longer, but does anyone have any questions? Romy, did you have anything in chat?
I don't think anybody wrote anything in the chat. If anyone has any quick comments or questions that they want to discuss, you can use the chat feature. While I give you guys time to do that, I'm gonna pull up a quick poll if you guys wouldn't mind answering for us.
Awesome, thank you. And folks, if you feel more comfortable or you want to, you can come off mute as well and ask questions. Okay, awesome. No questions. You guys are rock stars, I'll tell you. Is there anyone that would maybe want to share some experiences they've had recently with the job search process as it relates to the pandemic and doing remote interviewing and things like that? No? Okay. All right, we'll give you a minute or so here to finish up the poll. And as I mentioned, as we're kind of finishing up today, I will be sending a link to the recorded presentation along with a downloadable PDF that will have the resources and links that I talked about throughout the presentation. Because I know I talked through those items very quickly, and I knew I was going to have to finish in an hour. So I promise you, you will have those. And I encourage you to look at some of those as possibilities to help build your toolkit as you're looking at career changing or job searching in Agile or Scrum. Okay. Uh, Romy, did you need anything else with the poll, or we're good with that?
No, I'm gonna go ahead and close the. Oh, I thought it was launched this whole time. I'm sorry. Sorry guys, if you could just go ahead and answer these two questions for us about the material today. Awesome. Okay.
Okay, I actually do have a question out here. I have a lot of related background beyond my one-page resume. Yes, welcome to the club. It's very frustrating. You know, I wish I had an easy solution to that. In looking at putting together your resume, if you have traditionally gone or had kind of what we call the traditional chronological resume, which basically lists your places of employment, you know, the companies you've worked for, and you have definitely accrued a far more expansive bit of experience, it may make sense to move into a more narrative format. And Christian actually brought up a point about using to use a scanning website to bypass ATS. Yes, ATS are applicant tracking systems. So yes, there are some ways to do that to bypass an ATS. And okay, jobscan.co. I'm going to check into that. That's a great tip there, Christian. And to kind of get back to the question that Leonard asked, you know, I've moved to a format where it's a more narrative format where I'm looking at showcasing accomplishments versus just listing my companies that I've worked for. So if you kind of pull out, when you're thinking of Agile and Scrum, if you can pull out those relevant accomplishments or projects that, that really showcase what it is that that position is looking for, you can fit that on one page. Because ultimately what you're going to need to do is probably have multiple versions of a resume. That's just the reality nowadays. What you can also look at is having a virtual portfolio where you have more of like a vitae, where you have more of a multi-page listing of all your accomplishments, your experience, etc. That also includes maybe links to projects or things like that. So that would be what we would call your online portfolio. And then your resume is more tailored for the specific job that you're applying for. That could be one way that you could approach that and still fit it all on one page, but give somebody the opportunity to look for more information if they want to go to it.
Okay.
Good. Good. Excellent. Okay. Well, we're a little bit.
All right. No worries. Thanks.
We're a little bit past time. So definitely when I send you the information, you guys will have my email address. Feel free to reach out if you have specific questions. We're always happy to help you guys.
I can't move my mouse.
And I think we will go ahead and wrap it up. So thank you again, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for being here. And Natalie, thank you so much for presenting. Please keep a lookout for our email with the video and the links, and we hope to see you guys soon.